Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 58 of the Simpa Life Podcast. It is a beautiful snowy morning here in the northeast of England in little old Durham. As you can probably tell, I'm passing a milestone in my life. Well, I don't know if you can tell. This is the longest my hair has ever been in my 33 years of living. So yeah, I'm quite enjoying it. / can't be asked to get it cut. So we'll see where this one goes. And segueing onto our guest this week, bit of a shit one there this week. I'll give you some entertainment later, folks. We'll make up for it. Is a guest that I've grown to know quite sort of well, I would like to think, over the past sort of couple of years. Produced some content for their magazine, and I've spoke to them quite a few events over the years, starting at the Hemp CBD Expo many a moon ago. Actually, that seems like another world pre-COVID, if anyone can remember what that world was like. They are a former event director with they're a 20-year veteran of the holistic health industry, a cannabis consumer and advocate from Glastonbury, England. They're the founder and CEO of Green Queen magazine, a dynamic female-led cannabis news portal, and an early adopter of the cryptocurrency and NFT markets and industries. She is Ria Green. How are you doing?
Hi, Simpa. Yeah, this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? We've been trying to get a podcast down for a long time.
We have indeed. Very, very busy schedules and like ships in the night, I would say.
Yeah, there's so much going on. So, yeah, I suppose the reason why we've made Green Queen in the first place is to document all the stuff that's going on. And obviously, you know that there's loads happening. And I think that it's really important to document this bit, even though we're not in the full change at the moment. I think that, like, if you look at America, the amount that's changed over the past 10 years is phenomenal. So if we're going to be following in the footsteps of, or if we're going to be making our own footsteps in this industry, what are they going to look like? And what are the things that need to be spoken about now that are relevant for the future? And I think it's interesting because we're all kind of guessing and wishing what we want it to look like. But actually, it's almost like the English industry at the moment is like wet clay. It's still moldable and shapeable. So I think these conversations and these people that are at the fringe of change are really important at the moment. And I think that we need to empower each other and share stories that are relevant. I mean, we all come from a storytelling history, because before the television, there was only stories and songs to listen to, and we all used to sit around the fire. And I remember going to Francis of Assisi in Italy, and we looked at like Francis of Assisi was all Assisi themed, and he was a really cool dude. Francis of Assisi was really cool. He used to go and sing his sermons. He never read anything, and it was all this narrative of storytelling. And I suppose to some degree, it's almost like the person in the pub that can tell a really good joke. And it's always historically been in our nature to stand around these people and listen to the latest story. So what does that look like in the weed industry? What does it look like in our community? How do we make it entertaining but fun but relevant but listenable? So the mission of the magazine is kind of to entertain through educate through entertainment. So we can be funny and cool and culture, but at the same time we're constantly tapping away at this stigma. We're tapping away at a positive narrative. And the cannabis industry is really interesting because there's no one expert in the world that knows all the answers to all the stuff. So in one way, it's kind of breaking the patriarchal model of the kind of the triangle of like the teachers at the top, and the teacher tells everybody that the right way to do it is like this, and then everybody goes back to the teacher and makes sure they're correct. It doesn't work like that in this industry. Actually, the people who know the most are on paper the least qualified. It's not the doctors, it's the patients. It's the people that actually have first-hand experiential use. So this is a patient-driven movement, and if we don't have a space to start sharing these stories, how do we get out this patient information? So that's kind of where this whole thing started.
Okay. So there's quite a lot to ingest there, I suppose. So a few sort of point then, are you cannabis focused? Are you cannabis patient focused then, I suppose, with the Green Queen? And so I get that you share the exact same sort of idea that I did along when I started this, which was to educate and entertain. One informs the other effectively. If people are enjoying themselves, they're more likely to intake information and be able to actually utilize it, digest it and make it. Sorry, you doing to bounce?
1 second, I've got a parcel. 1 second.
Yeah, no worries. It's a reoccurring theme on these podcasts, folks. This is the world we live in now, isn't it? Home delivery. Oh, I wonder what it is. What's in the box? What's in the box? A little Seven reference for any Brad Pitt fans out there.
Sorry, Simpa.
Quite all right. I'm just giving my audience my best Brad Pitt impression from Seven. Going, what's in the box? What's in the box? Trying to figure out. I'm just now doing exactly what you guys are doing at home, looking in the background, going, what are we looking at? I think it's an elephant, maybe, on the windowsill. Yeah, I think it's an elephant. It looks pretty cool. Green poster. It's a nice little office setup. Hey, no way. Just realized, well, Ria's actually got the same. I can't show you because I can't take my camera off, but Ria's got the same box unit I've got under my drawers. That's where I store all of my stickers, business cards, stationery, all the relevant crap.
Officially the biggest laundry delivery of all time.
There you go. It was sheets. Hey, no worries. We've solved the mystery. I think we can all jump back into it now.
So yeah, storytelling, educating through entertainment. So originally, as you mentioned, I'm a holistic therapist. So the interesting thing about holistic therapy is, well, loads of things, but one of the interesting things about holistic therapy is you talk to the client about everything. So you should have, to give somebody a massage, you should give them a 15 to 20 minute consultation, which is interesting considering the doctor gives you 6. So what is it you're asking? Well, you're asking everything. You're asking what do you eat? Are you stressed? Are you stressed at work? Are you stressed at home? And then what that does is it gives you a picture of the person's health. And everybody says the same. They all say, do you eat well? Yes, I eat really well. Do you drink water? Yes. And then when you speak to them, you go, do you drink coffee? And you go 20 cups a day or Diet Coke. But you have to pry a little bit. And I think this is almost, if we can have the same view with the cannabis industry, so how do we get the holistic view of the industry? And as you know, it's so complicated because we're so quick to compartmentalize it. This is patient cannabis. This is recreational cannabis. This is hemp. This is this bit. This is CBD. But actually, it's all the same. And it's almost like there's whoever it is that are doing these media campaigns are almost like, oh, the general public are so stupid they can only deal with 2 boxes, good and bad, CBD, THC, hemp, cannabis. And it's like, actually, it's everything. And if we start explaining that in a more palliative, entertaining, fun way, and you can start to kind of engage with people, so you can start liking the patients. Once you start seeing these kids that are benefiting from cannabis, there's no way that you could be anti-cannabis. Once you see the hemp stuff, even if you don't like, even if you're a complete drugs are bad type guy, and you see what hemp can do to the soil, even that is a common sense argument to the general public to say, yeah, plant it.
It is and it isn't, because I mean, this is something that I was going to sort of mention to you, is that part of it, I would say, is a sinister plot to deliberately create divisive sectors within the industry so they can be monopolized, conglomerated, and effectively owned and licensed. And then another side of it is shadow banning, is social media. So even on, so it's the Green Queen magazine Facebook page, obviously you can't use the word cannabis. One of my main employers, Weed World magazine, it's now banned from using the words Weed World magazine. It comes up saying you cannot use this statement in a job title when you put it on your CV. And so this is reporting on the medical cannabis, CBD, and hemp industries globally. And I think that part of that, not that I'm saying that you're leading it at all, but I think that unfortunately you guys are stuck in it in the same way that my reach online is massively reduced because I refuse to not use the word cannabis. So because it's a triggered word, it then reduces traffic, it reduces attention, it then, like I said, leads to shadow banning. But then for the elites, as it were, the vested interests from various investment firms, the boys that are putting in billions now, they want this. They want there to be this idea that hemp is this separate plant and that you can't get a smokable, enjoyable drug as well as a therapeutic product and a beneficial carbon sequestration technology with a multitude of industrial applications from one plant. And so I think that's part of what feels like we're almost past a tipping point, I feel. This might be the last point I'll make in this story before I throw it over. The public know there's enough out there already that the general public are all going to fall into that. They're all going to eventually pass the line of, well, yeah, maybe people shouldn't be in jail for it. Well, yeah, maybe people that need it should get access. But if the education isn't there in the interim, then others will step in. And I think this is obviously where I think Green Queen yourself steps into this to help shape that narrative. I think that's what you were saying before about the industry still being malleable and controllable, shapeable.
Well, actually, the original concept for Green Queen was to be more of a patient resource. Mm-hmm. And we did actually build a forum into the web page that never got activated because so I've dealt with patients, and my mum's actually a patient as well. She suffers from MS. She was diagnosed with MS when she was 28, and the doctor basically said to her, "You'll be dead by the time you're 40. Good luck. I'll see you later." And she went on conventional medicine. They give her steroid injections. They give an MRI, and she was actually in the wheelchair for as a side effect of the pharmaceuticals. And she just naturally smoked weed anyway, and found that weed was the only thing that made her feel better. And she's a connoisseur. She's done loads of things, and you can just see how the doctor kind of writes people off. He just goes, "Oh, well, there's nothing we can do for you. See you later." And then to have the whole stigma of cannabis use. So, for example, she went to the doctors and said to the doctor said, "Oh, do you want any drugs for your MS?" She said, "No, it's all right. I control it with cannabis." She said, "Oh, that's great. Do you drive?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, we're going to have to report you to the DVLA." And she lost the license for 18 months. Yeah. So there's things like that that just really show that the system isn't ready, and the stigma is in loads of different places. And then, like the thing is about cannabis is it doesn't, there's no training. There's nobody that really understands it apart from the patients. So my mum, because she's been treating her MS with cannabis for like 25, 30 years, she knows she can look at a bag before it's even out the bag and she'll know whether she wants to smoke it. She doesn't even need to get it out the bag. And yet I've been to so many cannabis conferences and stuff where they're talking about how does the patient know what dose? How does the patient know how to do this? How do we... But you can't train a patient. You have to just give them enough confidence for them to be experimental with it, but also safe. But you can't have safety and freedom. You have to say to them, like, look, try it, start low, start slow, see how you go. But this mindset of like, oh my goodness, what if I get stoned? Well, have you read the side effects on tramadol or gabapentin or any of these other pills that they don't even think about? So the whole thing just needs turning upside down.
It's a language issue, because then it's the same way that drunk isn't stoned, but it is. Then being drowsy from your benzodiazepines, that's being stoned, but it's not, because of the language and the implications that are attached to these separate words. And this is what I was sort of implying before with then exactly what you're saying. There are no experts within this. Anyone who is self-appointing themselves as an expert in cannabis around the world at this point is frankly a little bit deluded. You may have a much wider knowledge base than the vast majority of others, but we cannot accredit ourselves as experts at this point, because then we will use our own egos and our own shortcomings to guide the formation of industries that will shape the lives of tens of, if not hundreds of millions of people. So I think
on the other hand, though, Simpa, and I must say it to you as well, because this whole thing was about me. In 2018, I was like, right, I'm going to go and find the experts and they're going to tell me all that needs to know about the industry. And actually, the more I looked at these experts, the more I thought, oh my goodness, I know more than them. I am the expert in the room. Quite often it's like, oh, and you are as well. Do you know what I mean? Completely. When you realise how many because it's such a new industry and because there's no way to vet information, there's so many interesting things that are happening. Not necessarily the people with the loudest voices are the ones that have the most information. So even though you say, oh, you're not an expert, I beg to differ. I say, actually, you are. You're one of a very few handful of people that understand the different aspects of the plant. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people know their section, like they're growers and they know how to grow, or they're extractors and they know how to extract. But not many people know how to grow, extract, treat a patient, deal with aftercare, see it in real life, know the difference, know what hemp does to the land. Actually, you are on a handful of people that are an expert. Sorry, Simpa, you've been promoted.
All right, I'll take the promotion. I do hope it comes with a pay rise. But I'm thinking.
Oh, no, I'm not making any promises.
I unfortunately find myself in a position of I just want truth at this point, and it feels disingenuous to me when we create an entire industry called hemp, and then the same industry actively rallies, lobbies, and pays for the continued criminalization of cannabis consumers. It bothers me when we have things in trading standards laws, in advertising regulatory laws that are supposed to protect against false advertising but also misrepresentation even before you get up to that. So we've got companies out there that are selling hemp seed oil. Hemp seed oil doesn't exist. There is cannabis seed oil produced from the cultivars of low THC cannabis. If you look into the labeling laws of this, if it derives from a botanical product, it has to be named with its botanical name. The botanical names globally were standardized so that cannabis is Cannabis sativa L. Of that, there are 3 subgenus: Ruderalis, Cannabis sativa, and Cannabis indica. Hemp isn't any of these. It's an arbitrary collection of low THC. So what we're actually saying is that if we're saying hemp does this, we're saying, yeah, these say 13 to 16, I think it is in Europe at the minute, accepted, air quotes, hemp cultivars can do all of these wondrous things, but the tens of thousands of other cultivars and chemovars of this don't do that. So if I go and plant a plant in my back garden, and it's cannabis, it doesn't help renewtrify the soil. It doesn't help remove toxins. It doesn't help sequester carbon. It doesn't produce potentially medical grade oils according to them, but it can. It's the same.
Well, with the same questioning of what is and what isn't the right wording. Actually, if you look at this, one of the things that really got my back up was I actually visited Switzerland not long ago and went to the biggest biggest European indoor legal facility there, and they're licensed, and they were saying they're losing nearly 30% to bud rot. But who's testing bud rot? Nobody. They're testing the THC, the CBD. They're testing all these levels like they're dangerous. But then something like mold in a dry herb vape is far more dangerous than any cannabinoid, and yet nobody's testing for that. And also another thing that slipped through the net is all these synthetic CBDs and isolate, and not only synthetic CBD, but also not only isolate, but also synthetic isolate. So we've been using cannabis for thousands of years, but we've never been using isolate products. And this is a whole minefield of stuff that people don't understand.
But it falls through the net though, because of there isn't the robust standardization of nomenclature. There isn't that language. So if you look in the UK, the reason that these synthetics have got through is partly because of legislative restrictions, B, because of vested interest and investment in Parliament, and then C is actually the definition of what medical cannabis is in the UK law. It's a cannabis-based medicinal product designed for human consumption. So cannabis-based is not cannabis. It's just not. The flowers system that we've got through the private clinics at the minute is operating through a legal grey area and loophole, and they are moving more and more towards these synthetic CBMPs. It's going to be incredibly hard to get a raw cannabis product registered as a CBMP and have the same protections as any other pharmaceutical drug. However, synthesized and biosyntheses, which is taking all of the bulk CBD isolate they're producing from, again, allowing hemp to grow everywhere. They're then using simple chemistry conversions to turn that CBD into any of the isomers of THC. So we've currently got, HCP, I think is the other, or HHC, which is one of the newest ones have just dropped. There's use the same mechanism to create CBD-HQ, use the same mechanism to create THCP, use the same mechanism to create Delta 8 and Delta 10. So all of these other things are being created through syntheses to skirt around the legislation to create markets when we don't know any of the impact of them on the end user. But because they'll fit into triple blind studies, they can then fit into the model of medical. So you can't use it as a plant. As you said before, you can test for you can test for any pathogen on a plant, but you've got to test the whole thing and then across a larger crop. It's the same with the consistency of cannabinoids and terpene levels. If you're taking that off a raw plant, it's going to change from the top to the bottom of the plant, depending on UV exposure, the amount of nutrients absorbed, depending on the position of the soil, any of the other quite minute variables.
Wow, I'm really fascinated by this, actually, because I'm an aromatherapist. So when you make a blend for somebody, so when you make a blend for a client, say if somebody comes in, and you make them a blend of lavender, tea tree, and lemon oil, and you do 3 drops of each. They come back next week. You have to vary those drops, so you get the same raw ingredients, but you have different amounts. So you'd have like 2 drops, 4 drops, 3 drops, and the reason for that is the patient becomes tolerant to the blend. So if you want the same effects, you vary it a little bit, and the patient has a better response than if you'd use the same blend over and over again. And if you think about that in nature, that nature is intelligent healing, what happens is by the time you've consumed the crop, those slight variables that have happened in the planting of the whatever, even indoor crop, even exactly the same cutting, exactly the same situation, exactly the same system will have slight variables. And those variables are what means the patient responds again. And I believe that this standardization of like some of the epileptic kids that are having standardized medicine, which is one of the requests from the medical criteria, is because it's standardized and because it's the same every time, they're not getting the good effects. So that they start off, they get rid of the fits, and then after 2 to 3 months, the fits start to return. If they had a varied medicine, what you should do is you should swap oils and go to a different one, and you'll get the tolerance back, and you have this variation of different oils, and that means the effects will happen again. So in a way, what people are asking for is nature's already packaged it and done it perfectly. Nature already has given us the complete answer. The next crop, your tolerance will change again. You'll have the desired effect will come back again. Nature's already wrapped that up and sorted it out for us. And by trying to fit it into the pharmaceutical model of making it the same every time, standardized, it's exactly the same, you lose that effect. And the other thing is about standardization is the tolerance issue. So if you take a paracetamol every time, you have the same effect every time. And this is what they're trying to make with cannabis-based products. So they're trying to get the same effect every time, but it's an adaptogen. It's constantly adapting to the body's needs. So you can't have a standardization that has the same effect on the body every time, because cannabis is intelligent healing.
They can and do, as far as they are concerned. This is what I said, like I said, they're doing with biosyntheses and synthetics. So the synthetics are slightly scarier because they're then creating novel cannabinoid structures that do not exist in nature. So they haven't been synthesized naturally in any of the plants that we have thus discovered or utilized in human history. Obviously, we've only been documenting cannabinoids since about 1910, something like that. CBD was, I think, discovered accidentally in like 1920, 1930, something like that. And so we've been building up this awareness and knowledge base of that. And as you say, the pharmaceutical model has very much been single symptom, single cure, as it were, or single treatment. And for the longest time, that has created an expectation of how then cannabis should be derived into a medical product. But as you say, the raw product, even the creation of your own sort of FEC or full extract cannabis oil at home, that you're going to get, I mean, it's colloquially called strain lock, is what they typically call it. And it's tolerance, but it can be varied through terpenes or through ratio of cannabinoids. So this is something that I figured a while ago, is that by introducing CBD into my diet, I didn't have to take as long of a THC break to get the same sort of tolerance drop. Terpenes as well will help mitigate this. And so there is a whole school of science that is developing on one side, but it has been cast to the shadows because it doesn't fit in the for-profit model. So at the minute, because it has to be very simplistic, not even for the end consumer, but for the doctors prescribing the products, they need to go CBD good, THC bad, but THC not so bad as long as the CBD. So as long as they have that little narrative and that little story, they can go off and prescribe. But we're seeing all kinds of problems with the clinics in the UK. It's one of the reasons I'm doing a deep dive investigative piece at the minute. So I'm speaking to people on all sides at the minute. I've got a few, whistleblowers, I guess, have come forward and given me some good information. And basically, there is a lack of education, or at least the presentation of a lack of education. But at the higher levels, there are still deals that are being made as if this was any other industry. But the nature of cannabis and its history, its heritage, the culture is still here. This isn't some ancient knowledge that was found. This is an active, live, real culture and community that effectively is under a form of genocide. They're being torn apart. For decades, we were all cannabis, and we had farmers that were growing low THC, and they wanted it for agricultural means, and we had the people fighting for their kids for access, and we had sort of everybody of all spectrums. And then the corporate interest over the past 30, 40 years, we're not even that. 30 years, we'll call it, in the UK, since they basically allowed the licensing of hemp in the early 90s, has created this structural separation between certain aspects of the community, a division, a separation, and a dilution, which has meant now people are basically forced to go, well, you get what you're given through the established medical system, or you remain a criminal.
Well, I think in fact, I'm trying to write an article at the moment about legalisation. What does legalisation actually look like? So I'm really blessed. I've met some of the most amazing people at some conferences and things around the world. And I've got some amazing WhatsApp groups that are in legal jurisdictions. So we've got this woman in Washington, and she's talking about a 46% tax. They're talking about things like labelling issues they've got in America, where they've got to send the product for labelling before they've had it tested. And then once they get it tested, they realise the label's wrong, and they've got to correct all the labelling, and it costs them 20 grand a time, and they're being taxed 46%, and they're not making that much money in the first place. And to set up a grow in America, a small grow or dispensary is £4 million. A small one is £4 million.
It's a pay-to-play classist system.
100%. So the point of the article I'm trying to get to is like, do we actually want legalisation? Well, I don't think we do. I think it's a plan, it's ours, and asking for legalisation is like going and asking the burglar to give you your telly back. I think they aren't going to give it you back because they want to optimise it. But interestingly, from just adding another tab to this conversation, I did a lot of ayahuasca for a couple of years. I went out to Peru. We took a group out to Peru to drink ayahuasca in the jungle. And it really shows you that this plant isn't just a plant, it's the spirit of the plant. And when you first drink, you think, nah. And then you meet her, you can feel it, you can feel her come in, and you're like, oh, she's arrived. And you can feel this plant, and all of a sudden, all this ayahuasca art and all this stuff that you've seen, you can see the visions, you can see the vibrations, you can see the music. It's really personal and difficult to explain, but there's definitely a sense when you come out that we're connected to everything. The plants are a miracle. And like, how did we even know that these plants are meant to be consumed in this way? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. And cannabis is actually the most palatable shamanic master plant on earth. More people use cannabis than any other mind-altering substance. And I believe it does something in the same way as DMT is classed as like the God molecule. I think THC is the similar kind of cannabis version of DMT, where it connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, THC is a perfect analog of anandamide, the endogenous cannabinoid, which is called the bliss molecule. So it gives you an idea that these compounds, obviously DMT research has been a bit skirty and everywhere else. So current consensus from my last research on this, and I will admit that hasn't been this year, so there may very well have been more updated studies, is that DMT is synthesized in the gut. And there's a pervading sort of knowledge base that is coming to this idea that because more of our hormones and our neurochemicals are produced actually in the body and driven to the brain, that actually the brain isn't then, I suppose to steal a phrase, the seat of the soul. And so we're starting to recognize that actually the body's own intelligence, I mean, I speak of it as the head, the heart, the hara. So your base instinct, your emotional center, and your linguistics, neurological processing center, complex shapes, ideas, etc. And then the alignment of these is facilitated by these substances. So whether it is sort of quietly sitting and having your rituals on an end of an evening, you finished work, you go home, you sit down, you make your brew, you get your skin, you get the roach, you build your joint, you know what I mean? You sit, you put on that program, you're watching that ritualistic interaction. That is you reconnecting with your spirit, with your being. And that is a mechanism that I feel has been hijacked from us by two of the other most, in fact, probably the most commonly abused and used drugs on the planet. In fact, three of them: sugar, alcohol, and tobacco. We've lost ritual connection to them. They've become habitual. And I feel that cannabis has the same worry to a lot of us. I try to always consciously consume cannabis whenever I do, not because I feel that I owe it to anything or because I feel obligated to, but because I feel that it self-regulates within me. So I'm aware when I want it, why I want it, what I'm trying to get from it. It's a conscious sort of interaction. And I fear that a creation of a legalization model, which actually legalization is prohibition 2.0. It is not the end of ubiquitous criminalization of cannabis consumers and those that interact with the industry. We've already seen that in regions where, you know, Oregon just last month, 250 ton of illegal cannabis was seized, and that is going to be destroyed. So you think of, well, where's the net benefit from that? Where's the gain of any of this? It's still detrimental to the system, to the environment, to the ecology, to the socio-economic systems that it's sent to govern. It's not actually benefiting the people. And so
if you look at it, well, generally, it doesn't matter what story, this is back to the storytelling stuff. It doesn't matter which legal jurisdiction you ask. They all say legalization doesn't work. If you speak to people in Canada, I spoke to 3 people from Canada and they said they left with PTSD. I was like, what have they done to you to even say that? And they were all really sincere with it. And they say it just absolutely, they got devastated, and all the legacy grows, all the people that have been doing the good work, all the people that have been changing policy. As soon as it becomes a investment banker territory, as soon as they come in with their hedge funds, they just push everyone out the way, and they just don't care. They don't care about the humanity and the personal story and the fact that it's a 3-generation farm. They don't care. It just gets written off.
But they do care. That is the point of legalization. That is why we're arriving at this point in our history. It is because they have spent 50 years in a global war, and more of us than ever before are aware of the power of cannabis, of other substances, how they build communities, how they erode ignorance, how they can help remove preset ideology and indoctrination into nationalist thinking, into, you know, neoliberalistic ideology, into all of these conceptual prisons that we are forced to live our lives in. And we've built these trades, these economies. I mean, global drug trade is worth what, 150 plus billion a year? It's ridiculous. So we exist in this world. It's just now if they come and they become the dealers, they become the providers, because it's not just cannabis. Once they've got cannabis, they'll take everything else from us. This is not just, it's not hyperbole, I would say, for me to say this. We are on the precipice of a cultural genocide. The ruling class, the investment class, are coming to take everything that we have spent decades building in the shadow of their oppression. And if we're not careful and we don't unify and actually, as I say, standardize this language, so when we can say that cannabis is cannabis, cannabis builds batteries, cannabis gets me high, cannabis stops fits, cannabis sequesters carbon, it renutrifies soils. We don't need to say that medical cannabis does that, or hemp does this, or CBD. No, it's all cannabis. And any step away from that dilutes it.
So since I've started writing, I write the word cannabis. I've never used the word cannabis in normal life. I'd never use it. I'd always say weed. And it's interesting that all the words are really derogatory to what it is. And even the word green queen it's like, it's given her a new name. It's going, actually, you're not none of those things. You're the queen of the plants. Like, even though I have got the best nickname in town, the plant is the queen, not me. And I'm just her humble servant. And I think at the end of the day, it is like, it's like, can I swear?
Of course you can.
I was just checking.
You ever seen me speak live? Oh, I would come on.
I saw already. No, but basically we fucked the earth, we fucked the land, we fucked our social systems, our economy's fucked, all this stuff is fucked. And we've got this plant that nature has given us as a gift, and it's perfect as it is. And it's gone, here you go, you can fix everything. And we're going, oh, great. Can we fuck that too? And it's like, what are we doing? And I think if we can and the other thing is, and I'm sure that this is, we used to put on speakers events. We used to put speakers events on at festivals, and we had 12 locations across the UK at one point. And the thing was, it was so often that the people in the audience already knew the topic. And I think this is the problem in this as well. It's like we're getting out to the people that already know that cannabis is the answer. So how do we start penetrating the people that don't? And it's by being cool. It's just by being really appealing and entertaining and fun and funny and watchable.
But it's unifying as well, because otherwise all we're going to do is create echo chambers. So this is why I still feel I'm stuck on day one of this. Everyone else is still sprinting ahead, and I'm going, whoa. You haven't settled on what we're calling this yet. You were running off and saying it's hemp when it benefits you, so you can create a multi-million-pound company. But then when you want to seem cool, you can use the word cannabis. Yeah, but then if we look into your corporate records, where's your donor funder going? Oh, it's going to the Conservative Party. What are the Tories doing? Oh, we're not going to be legalizing drugs anytime soon. We want tougher prison sentences. We want this. It's a farce, really. It's a co-option. It's a form of theft. They are building a fiefdom on top of our cultural lands. Without getting too, again, hyperbole about this, it literally feels like an extinction type event where we're told at gunpoint, toe the party line, say you're a medical user, jump down into our thing, pay our people, enrich our system, impoverish your community. But
on the flip side, if you take that the other way around, and I think like you've got to see it from a positive, is actually what this is doing is it's making people look and go, maybe the government are wrong about this. Maybe I can do it better. And this point of empowerment, and like you said about the language, I don't think about it as language. I think about it as mental territory. So it's almost like what's that film? Was it Inception, when they build the whole territory in their mind? Yeah. And then, so it's almost like we build these territories, and it's like, oh, the teacher's right, and I should go to school, and I should get the qualification. And all of a sudden you leave university with 35 grand's worth of debt, and that mental territory is like, shit, I had that wrong. That isn't correct. That was a bad move. And all of a sudden it's destroyed. People who go vegan and things like that, you can see they're like, oh my God, my whole life I've been eating wrong because I didn't know, and now I'm doing it. And their mental territory changes, and all of a sudden everything's different.
You can't know what you know until you know it ultimately. And so you need people to signpost that, really.
It's the waking up, and we talk about waking up like it's a click, but it's not. It's you wake up about one thing. So for example, crypto. So crypto has fascinated me for 10 years because I woke up about money about 10 years ago when I learned about the fiat system and fractional reserve lending and the fact that the banks just make the money out of thin air. And it took me a while to digest it. Do you know what I mean? It took me a while. I wrote a letter to everybody I owed money to and said that money doesn't exist unless you prove it can. I'm not paying you. And I even writ to everybody. I had this whole interesting time, and my web designer actually created Get Out of Debt Free, which was a web page that helps solve £12 million worth of debt for people by just writing to credit card companies saying, this is fraud, you never had no money, don't contact me again, it's harassment. And he had like 3 letters, and it cancelled all this debt. So money's a really interesting thing because actually, how do you really control something? And it's the free market. And if you look in the past of how things change. So, for example, the original Silk Road, not the site, the road. What was it created? Trade. Trade is always the most important thing. And it's like we literally change the territory so we can trade with each other. All the most important, Machu Picchu, I went to Machu Picchu. What did they do? Markets, trade. It's like trading is key. And if we can keep the trade within our community, that's what's going to empower our community. And if you look at like social groups like Jewish people or Indian people, they don't spend money outside of their community. If you want a plumber, you get a Jewish plumber. If you want an accountant, you get a Jewish accountant. And first you find family, then you find friends, then you find general community, but you don't go outside of your community. And the reason for that is the recirculation of money within their own network. But what happens is we get our money, we get the wages, and we go and give it to Tesco's, and Tesco's just siphon it out, and we never see it again. And then we've got to go and find more money that doesn't exist within our community. And as soon as we get it, we send it out and ship it out.
And that's exactly sort of my point. To maybe step back slightly off my soapbox. Again, no offense to anybody that has got a prescription and is a medical patient. I just use that as a visual metaphor, shall we say. But what Ria's just said there articulates it exactly, and that is what I am scared of. These clinics are not based and built by people from the community. They are, when you look at where the corporate structure of them goes, where the people's money is ultimately going to go. They are going to arrive over certain tax thresholds, so that is not going to stay in, frankly, even in the country. It's going to be invested elsewhere. The fact that we're already seeing conglomeratization, meaning that the bigger players are already circling, waiting to buy these boys up. As soon as they do, they're not going to pay tax in this country either. Whereas Dave down the street, who's paying tax on his electric, who's paying tax on his seeds, who's paying tax on his newts, you know what I mean? If we can incentivize standardized education across the board at all levels, so the same thing the doctors are learning, the same thing the end consumers are learning, so that everybody has the opportunity to participate. It is incredibly easy to grow cannabis as a plant. You know what I mean? You can literally... It grows
like a weed.
Exactly. And so there are these hyperbole arguments that are made of the potential dangers and downfalls and pitfalls. And most of them are related to prohibition or related to greed and ignorance of the individuals involved. And I mean that from the criminal gangs at one side to the growers that are now growing for the clinics at the other side, for the international cartels, if you want to call them as such.
Well, it's a very interesting time because there's a merging and there's a grey area. And as the chasm grows, the grey area grows as well. And what happens, from my understanding in legal jurisdictions and in the UK, is even these multi-million-pound greenhouses have to reach out to black market people who would never be able to get a license to go and fix the problem, whether it's spider mites or whether it's just poor setup or whether there's no maintenance, whether it's things like drying. And we've actually set up a company called iCannalink that we're going to be actioning next year, providing business solutions for things like hydroponic consultancy, payment gateway, branding, advertising, extraction, like every section to come and offer consultancy, because I think that even these multi-million-pound companies, this is the new space for them as well. And sooner or later, they have to call in somebody who knows what they're doing. And most of the people that know what they're doing aren't employed by the government. They're all black market. And it's the same in Canada, America, and these places as well.
It's the same in the world wide, because again, people don't feel represented by what's happening. They may like the structure of the industry. They may even like how it's operating, but what they hate is the fact that it is a form of value extraction, of the creation of intergenerational wealth by a certain class. So this is something I wanted to discuss with you, because obviously Green Queen is a dynamic female-led cannabis news poll. Looking at the statistics out of America last year are very disheartening. I'm just going to pull up my own blog here just to double check it before I pull it out. At the start of COVID, female representation in the cannabis industry was really quite high. I'm not going to be able to find this blog. I can't remember which one I wrote it in. It was really high. It was something like 36%, somewhere in that sort of region. And then it dropped down to, I think, 12, 13, something like that over COVID. So they were forced out of the industry. The same happened to minority participation and share as well of the market. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on how things are currently going, because to me it looks like it is the same CEOs and directors that end up at every industry. They don't care what the industry is. They know business. They know how to manipulate the political sphere, how to lobby. They know how to get around tax. They know how to do all the dirty criminal stuff that's technically legal, because they're the ones who wrote the laws to make it legal for them. But
all the dirty, legal, criminal stuff.
Yeah. So they're the gangsters in business suits rather than tracksuits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I see them gaining more and more ground every day, every week. They're conglomerating. You've got people like Curaleaf just quietly losing money left, right, and center, but just, we'll have that. You got Canopy, you're doing the same. You got all kinds of people just grabbing up areas while then moving into regions around the world. I mean, I've said that I believe that international investment through the cannabis industry is the new form of colonization. We are in a post-nationalist world. We're in a corporate nation world. So it's corporations have more power and influence than individual nations. So when a country then goes, we want to build a cannabis sector, they go and go to a pre-existing manufacturer, licensed producer in one of the regions, and they go, okay, we'll help build you this infrastructure, get it going for a year or two, and then come in and buy it out. You become just another.
But I think that's the same thing that's happened to the women CEOs. I think the women are more likable, and they're pretty, and they're a good front of house, and it's a good front of brand, and they build it to a certain stage, and then they come and the investors come in and do the same as what they do everywhere else, which is just either buy them out or do something. What is it? I watched this brilliant documentary once called Cocaine Cowboys, and they basically said they had that much money they could bribe everybody, and if you couldn't bribe them, you just threaten them because you could pay someone to go and do something horrible to them. So regardless of what happened, money got you what you wanted. And I think it's a really interesting time, and this is why it's worth documenting, because we are at this fork in the road. And so Free the Weed has been a campaign slogan since the 60s, and we've actually put it on our front page, and it's been one of our repeated slogans. And instead of Free the Weed, it's crossed out and it says Decentralize the Weed. And this merging of crypto, because it's the same. So it looks to me, so in my mind, in my dyslexic mind, the way that I see this ecosystem is like a jungle, and it's like, how does nature work? It collaborates. There's no competition in nature. There's all these symbiotic relationships. And what's more important in the jungle? Well, the ants are important, the birds are important, the trees, they're all important. Everything is equally as important because it's part of this symbiotic relationship that makes the thing work. And I think these corporations believe that they can just come and be the big tree in the jungle where everything, the Walmart in the jungle, and nature doesn't work like that. And I think what's happening is back down to like the spirit of the plant. I think the spirit of the plant pushes back. And as somebody who's grown small a long time ago, grown small attic grows and stuff. I used to work in a hydroponic shop when I was a teenager. I used to go to the hydroponic shop in my school uniform and stick labels on and play snooker. But anyway, the thing is about the communities, the information all comes to each other. So it's those little conversations you have, have you seen this new strain, or have you tried that, or what if you do this, and have you tried these newts? And the community's got its own, but whereas the big companies, they haven't got that underground knowledge, and they're like, it fits in a system and it works like this. But anybody who's grown and like got a little bit lackadaisy will know that it doesn't, sometimes it just goes wrong. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes things just go tits up. And I think personally, it's when you don't love it, or when you don't put the attention in, or when you're being a bit like, when you're counting the money before you've planted it, when you're going, oh, I need this much money and this is going to sort me out. The plant's going to backfire on you. And this is just like for $1,000. You're like, come on. And they're like, no. So what does that look like in a £120 million greenhouse? Well, I spoke to the guy from Aurora 2 years ago, and what he said was, where they built this high-tech, all singing, all dancing, best greenhouse in the world, the condensation's gone from the plants and it's hit the glass roof. It's caused mold on the ceiling in the same way as it does on council house windows, and it's contaminated £1 billion worth of weed, and they're losing $15,000 an hour. So I think that this spirit of the plant is in there constantly kicking people, and I don't think you can back her into the corner. I think that there's something more going on. I think nature's got more going on than what we can see, and I think that I've been trying to learn a lot about like the deepness of the kind of spiritual context of cannabis in our history. And one of the books that I found was Plants of the Gods. And it talks about cannabis being ruled by Saturn. So it's anything ruled by Saturn is rules, like authority, pushing stuff. And I think what cannabis is going to do is it's going to push authority. It's going to push the rules. It's going to push people's own authority of going, you know what? I don't care. I'm doing it, and I don't agree with your rules. And it's this whole personal empowerment journey that is a plant medicine. It's a plant medicine, and it takes people on this kind of like, it rises people up. And I think that's what we need now more than ever, is for people to be empowered and connected, and to feel that they can have a voice and they can say what and their point and their story is valued. So I think that's how we empower our communities. You create a safe space. So one of the things with Green Queen is we want to offer anonymity as well. So if people want to write a story anonymously, there's that space to do so as well. I think there's a lot of things, coming back to crypto just for a second, I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from that space. And one of the things is anonymity. And it offers that we want to talk about it, we want to offer it to the community, but we don't want to hot ourselves up and endanger ourselves because it's a dodgy territory. And we don't want everyone to have a go and get registered and go with the card, because what if next year they change their policy and come after everybody with a card? Because that's what they're doing in legal jurisdictions. They kind of coerce big companies into getting a license, and they say, get a license, it'll be 2 months. And these big grows hot themselves up, put their name and address and all their details on the form. They don't get a license in 2 months. It takes them 18 months. And if they grow in between that 18-month period, they lose the option of a license, and you can't go back once you put the process in. So if you were going to grow, it would be an illegal operation. So they just devastate these legacy grows.
It's the illusion of participation. It is the creation of artificial monopolies, and they've got incredibly good at this over the years. We just have to then look at the original American push for cannabis prohibition with the marijuana tax. You look at the industries involved with that. I mean, you had was it William Randolph Hearst from sort of timber. He was the Yellow Press paper, which obviously perpetuated quite a lot of the cannabis scare stories and the reefer madness of the time. You had the DuPont family. I mean, Jesus Christ, look what they did with PFAS, the forever chemicals, like C8 and all that shit. Then the copper, other industries as well, were actually going to benefit from the limitation of any mass national cannabis program. And so from that point onward, we've kind of had this model for how to negate cannabis being utilized. But then the internet came along, and all of a sudden, all of these rebels and these soldiers from around the world that have, been at war with prohibition, who've safeguarded this knowledge, this experience, were able to get together in forums and groups and share and send seeds across the internet and, build these communities, these decentralized spaces. And then obviously we're now living in a world of ever increasing scrutiny on the internet, censorship, and arguably authoritarianism. And so we're now trying to figure out how to create these spaces physically and how to create these actual communities. And I think the cryptocurrency has probably going to play a role in that. It already is in a lot of ways. We know that everyone goes on you go on Instagram, not for sale, ask for Wiki, you go for Wiki, you send a little bit of a cryptocurrency, you can get whatever you want. I mean, you go on use Tor and you go on the dark web and you go on any one of the predecessors to Silk Road. You can get basically
the other thing is Silk Road.
Anything. So the stuff's already sort of there.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Silk Road. So Silk Road was a really big thing that's just disappeared like it never existed. But actually, look what it did, because prior to Silk Road, nobody gave a shit about Bitcoin. It was there, people were talking about it, and nobody gave a shit. I went with $6,000 to my dad in 2011 and said, can you buy me some Bitcoin when they were a $5? And he said, you're a dickhead. Why don't you just go and get a real job? and I didn't do it because it was just like, well, what are you going to do with it? What's it for? It was a bit pain to buy. And it was only Silk Road that made people even bother trying to buy it. And it literally launched crypto to a place where it is now. And I think it's going to have another key role to play in this whole tokenization and tokenomics of like how we trade and what we accept, because it's the same thing as like we just want to keep our wealth in our own community. Well, how big's our community? Well, it's global. So how do we keep our wealth in our own community with anonymity, with all the facilities that you want from money? So you want it to be easy, you want it to be quick, you want all of that stuff, but you don't want to do the whole know your customer. You want to have a layer of protection, because it can change back as well. You can give everybody all your information, and then in 2 years' time they change back and incriminate everybody again. So actually, this underground network that the plant to some degree has built, do you know what I mean? The plant has got people all over the world that do stuff that they risk their life for. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's giving people medicine, whether it's growing weed, whether it's, I mean, like some of these countries, they hang you for the amount of weed that they come out of. Do you know what I mean? Some of these African countries and Thailand, you can literally get hung in places, but you can still get weed there. It's phenomenal when you think about it.
Yeah.
There's nowhere in the world you can't get weed. And that in itself, I believe, to some degree, that the plant is making her own army. Like, we don't need to. Like, she's already gathering us. And sometimes you'll meet people and you'll go like, I've got all these jobs to do. And the person will go, I've done them. So from shamanic culture, in shamanic culture, what you do is when you want to train to be a shaman or an ayahuasca or you want to serve medicine, first thing you do is you go and do dieta. So say you want to serve ayahuasca, you drink ayahuasca a couple of times and you go, okay, you train with the medicine enough, and then they go, right, you're ready, come to the jungle and do a dieta, which is a diet. And you diet on plants between a week, and the longest diet's like 2 years, where you diet on the plant every day and you meditate with the plant. And they're not psychedelic plants. They're things like they're trees and berries and bushes. And they even say that when you come back to your own land, then you do your own plants. So a friend of mine did it with some oak and trees, but you have to really learn because they're toxic as well. So you diet with these plants, and what the idea is, you cultivate that plant inside of you and you build an alliance with the spirit of the plant, and it becomes your ally. Then you use it. So if you want to do healing things, you choose a healing plant. If you want to do psychic things, you use a psychic plant, or you do a dreaming plant, so you diet on the plant that you want to emphasize your skill. And what I was thinking the other day is, man, some of us have been on a 20-year dieta with weed, and we've taken it every day for years and years and years, and we've got a relationship with it, and it's telling us stuff. And it's almost like when things are invented, like when the light bulb was invented, the same invention happened several places across the world at the same time, because it was almost in the consciousness, and we pulled it down from the consciousness.
Yeah, there's some interesting work by, his name escapes me. This concept called morphic resonance, or Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake came up with the idea of sort of morphic resonance. And so you can look at it on one side as the formation of sort of crystals and of new structures in nature. When they first begin to form, it takes a long period of time. But then the more iterations that occur, the faster the construct of it. They observed this as well in behavioralism through the study of, I think it was blackbirds, and they found with the gold-topped milk bottles that the birds suddenly, it's targeted going, gold top is the creamiest, the best milk. We can peck through the top of that. The same behavior was then observed by people studying birds in several regions around the world. That exactly that is.
And the 100 monkeys, you know the 100 monkeys, don't you?
Refresh me.
So the 100 monkeys, I think it was like the Galapagos Islands, or like these small islands, and they're potatoes, and one island, the monkeys on one island learned how to wash the potatoes in the sea. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it started happening on all the other islands, even though they were unconnected. And that's where the term 100 monkeys comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it's an interesting paradigm that, because of the internet, because of the sheer volume of data and information that is driven, we're all almost being tapped by all of these other influences. So say every time a concept arrives to the 100 monkey point, then at some point there's something intrinsic to us that then becomes in tune to it. And so then I think this may be in a way related to the binary nature, or what it seems to be the binary nature of modern reality, where you have to take a stance. There is no middle ground in the world anymore.
There's no middle ground in the world no more.
Yeah, you've got to literally, you are left or right wing within politics. You are for something or against something. There's no space for nuance. And if you were to then take that apparatus or that structure to be gospel, to be true, then that could work as a mechanism, I think, to sort of explain that. And I think that's all the more reason why it's important, if we understand that concept of morphic resonance as a delivery system for knowledge and information, that the standardization of education means that you can get to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of monkey levels, which then that's when it becomes common knowledge. So rather than these pockets of, I mean, there's still people out there that are saying that, well, no, cannabis that is medicine, or rather cannabis as a plant is female and hemp is male, which just isn't an accurate representation. There are still obviously the indicators.
That would be the way that that's the way that I feel more comfortable explaining it like that than the hemp and marijuana thing, because the way that I see it is that the women have got hairs and the men have got balls. It's as easy as that. When you look at a plant, it's either got balls or it's got hairs, and if it's not got balls, it's because it's been grown in a contained environment and it's not been pollinated. But it's not even that. Cannabis is a diatomaceous plant, so we fucked with it. We're the ones who bastardized its genetics. So ultimately, it self-selects
hermaphrodization process, even the fact if you then scatter seeds into an area, if it then goes through generational cycles, it determines the amount of males that it wants within that population. It's, again, that intrinsic intelligence sort of within it. And it's getting muddier and muddier, the waters, when you look at the Americans that are now producing feminized hemp seeds, which makes my brain go, what? But it's a difficult situation, because any perpetuation of one narrative strengthens that narrative through that mechanism of morphic resonance. More people then are likely to go onto that narrative. And I'm not saying my narrative is any better or any more informed or any further up the field. I'm just saying that I am going to when all the hysteria, when all of the crap is done, all of it will be labeled as cannabis sativa L. When all of the reefer madness and everything is done.
Maybe we'll even get a new name that's better. Maybe we'll find a word like Uber that didn't exist before.
There won't be a need to. We've had the word for 250 years. Long before cannabis's prohibition, cannabis had a name. And we can now prove it through the study of its genome, of mapping it backwards of what is cannabis. And what we're discovering in that mapping is hemp doesn't exist. It is still just an arbitrary collection of certain cultivars that we have selected. And even that, if you leave that cannabis in that environment, she grows hot. Stress one of these arbitrary low THC cannabis plants out, and it produces more THC, because THC is the protectant of the plant. It's why it's evolved onto the species. So we end up with this weird mechanism as well, that if we then...
Semantics is a really interesting thing, and it's interesting, the language. I've got a good friend of mine, in fact, you'd love some of his YouTubes. He's called Darren Dioge, and he does, he talks about words and language, and he talks about shapes. And another one is Marty Leeds, 33. He's amazing. He does a lot on language. Marty Leeds, 33, alphabet. That's a fascinating video. But the idea of, like, what are the shapes? What are the original shapes? And Darren starts his talk by putting a triangle, a square, and a circle on the board, and says, who was taught that these are the base shapes? And everybody puts their hand up, and he says, you've all been lied to. These are the base shapes, and it's a line and a circle. And how do you know they're the base shapes? They're in your body. The men have got a line and the women have got a circle. And if you go to Colombia or any of these indigenous places, everything is around this line and circle, and male and female. So they've got the maloka, which is the roundhouse, which is the womb, and then they put the fire in the middle, which is the man. And the idea is you can't have anything new created unless you bring together a male and female aspect, because that's how it shows itself in nature. So when we're talking about Green Queen being a feminine voice for the movement, how I've thought long and hard about how we don't exclude men. How do we make it feminine, but men want to still read it and be involved? So what are the properties that we can bring over? Making it beautiful, making it a beautiful thing, making it pretty, making it the graphic, making it like attractive to look at. And then the other side is the circular aspect. Is this, what does a circle look like? Well, a circle is this round table. It's everybody coming equally, oligarchically. So we've all got something equal to offer to the solution, and we all put a little piece into the puzzle, and together we could, the parts are greater than the whole. You know, we all have a little bit to offer the narrative. And I think at the moment we're coming out of a patriarchal society, and the internet is one of the reasons why we're doing that. Because when you search, how do I do this on YouTube, you get 10,000 videos, and you just pick and choose. Oh, I like the voice on that guy. I don't like the voice on here. Or that one annoys me. And it's like everyone's offering a little answer to the solution. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with the cannabis community, because there's no one person at the top who can answer everybody's questions anyway. They don't exist. It's got to be this, we're all piecing it together. And I think if you can all empower each other equally, and I think that's one of the things that you do really well, and that these speaking slots are really good for, is that we all need to practice. We all need to practice articulating the point, because we've all thought about it for such a long time. How do you get it into an escalator pitch? And I think the only way to sell it to somebody is to feel what their need is. What do they want? And you can say cannabis to regenerate communities, cannabis for children, cannabis for the economy, cannabis for, because actually it fits everything. But together we can chip away at it. And I think that we do need to keep it an underground cultural thing where we protect our own, you know, and we don't want to be everything public. And even the idea of me talking publicly is a little bit cringy, and you doing it so long it's admirable, because it's a scary thing to do, because it is counterculture. And do you want to share it with everybody? Esoteric knowledge is hidden for a reason. You don't want to give it to everybody. It's special.
I believe that it's not in the knowledge. I believe it is in the community. I believe it is in the physical presence that you feel when you are with somebody, when you are with somebody of kinship, somebody that accepts you for all of your eccentricities, for all of your weird and wonderful aspects of your personality, you know, that can view you as a whole and truly accept you. I think that sensation, that feeling is more powerful than anything else in the world. And I think then the discussions, the debates, and even the disagreements that can occur within that space are far more beneficial and lead to more growth and evolution of concepts, of individual ideas, and of the self, really, ultimately the self. And I think that they can steal everything. We could give them everything on a platter. We could literally, all of us, write down and give them tome after tome of this, of what it is that they would need, and they could build it. But we will not buy from it. We will not participate in it. I have been speaking to people recently that are asking me, why is the medical number still so low in this country? Why with the pricing? Why with this? Why with that? Why is so? And it's because a lot of people feel it's disingenuous. They may see themselves as a patient, they may see themselves as getting therapeutic benefit, but they do not see themselves represented in that system. Yeah, they want that legal protection, they want participation, but they do not want to give the same class that has spent 50 years demonizing them, criminalizing them, making their life small, marginalizing their voice in the community, filling them full of fear and dread, to then be the ones that go, give us a bit of money and here's your piece of paper and you'll be safe. And that, to me, it pains me. It greatly pains me, because I want to see a robust, established medical system where everybody gets access to a fair system. But it's not even represented correctly at this point. There are so many half-truths and, yeah, I'm not going to say worse yet.
Well, I think the best thing that's come out of this show is Outlaw's approach to it. And we actually... We had really similar heroes, and Outlaw was on the list. I think Outlaw's approach of suing the police and reminding them that they're public servants, and it's a different. I did sales years ago. I used to sell double glazing for my sins, and it's all about taking the power back. It's all about taking the power off somebody and saying, "Oh, this is the answer to the question." And what Outlaw has done is he's gone, "Hold on, you're a public servant, mate. Don't ask me what my name is. What's your name?" And that change in the way that we approach the police is key to what's happening. And we've got this real beggy kind of way. "Oh, please, officer, I've got a bad back and here's my piece of paper to say that I'm allowed to smoke weed." Oh, no, fuck you. You've stole our plant. You're not a doctor. You're meant to be a public servant. You're only meant to be approaching me if there's been a crime or there's a breach of the peace, and you're breaching the peace by approaching me, and now you're threatening me, and now you want to kidnap me. It's like the whole thing is we've got it wrong. We've got this beggy, and I think Outlaw is potentially the solution to the approach that we take with like what we're doing. Do we have to go and ask our doctor if it's okay? Well, hold on, the doctor doesn't know anything anyway. You know more than the doctor. You go and explain to the doctor what it is you want, and the doctor goes, "All right, I'll go and read about it." The whole thing is broken, and I think what Cannabis is doing is it's showing that the system is so broken. It's almost like when your mate comes back and goes, "I've just spent 500 quid on my car." And you're like, "But your car's only worth 400 quid. And they go, "It's all right, I've only got to spend another couple of 100 quid on it and it'll be fixed." And it's like, sometimes you just got to write it off, you know? And I think the system is broken, and rather than trying to fix this broken system, you just create a system of its own. And I think, I know I keep bringing it back to crypto, but I think crypto is the example of this, of just going, you know what, you guys don't know the subject. There was a brilliant talk by Charles Hodgkinson about Cardano, and he basically said, we're fed up of the government coming to us and asking us what crypto is. We don't have to train you. We don't have to even talk to you. If you want to read our reports, it's open source, it's online, but come to us as a peer. If you're not our peer, it's not our job to train you. And it's quite arrogant, but you know what? He's right. And it's not our job to train the government in cannabis. What it is we want to do it for the good of the community, not for the good of the establishment, because the establishment aren't meeting us at the same place. They don't even understand the terminology. I went to an agricultural meeting, but the British Agricultural Society run a meeting for making hemp more accessible to British farmers. We was in the meeting for an hour, And this guy was talking about CBD extraction. And I said, look, let's not muddy the waters with CBD conversations, because if hemp's a phytoremediational product, you shouldn't be extracting it anyway and making a consumable product. That needs testing. You need to do it in a contained, sterile environment. You need to do it in an indoor grow. That's a whole different argument. Stop muddying the waters and just let the industrial hemp people chip away at this massive problem of access. And the guy who's run the meeting from the Horticultural Society said, sorry, wait a second. Can cannabis be grown indoors as well? We need a different department. And it's like, look, it's not our job to train you. You've got to meet us as a peer. And if you can't meet us there, we can train you and you have to pay, because they want us to be private. Brilliant. We'll bring you into the private. We'll train you with the terminology. We'll train you on how far we are ahead. But it's a corporation, so you've got to pay. And I think that this magic hat approach is where I'm going with the ICANNA link and with Green Queen, of like, give it to the consumers, give it to everybody who needs the knowledge, and work out a way to charge the companies and the corporations. So the magic hat is what the Rainbow Serpents brought over, of like, if you want to eat, everybody puts something in the hat. If you've only got a little bit, put a little bit. If you've got more, put more. And we trust that there'll be enough in there to feed everybody. And that's the same approach we need to take with this community, I believe. Yeah,
there's a lot to unpack there. Start with that's just quite all right. Start with Outlaw. I mean, I really appreciate and sort of respect what he's doing. I think the establishment of Outlaw Legal Services is a great way of doing it. The fact that he's trying as much as possible to make the information open source in terms of how to stand litigant in person and how to deal with the magistrate system, which is obviously the first instance where most people are dealing with it through driving convictions and possession. Unfortunately, he's hit the same roadblock that most have around cultivation, that because of it being sort of a licensing issue and very quite nuanced because of the legislation, there doesn't seem to be any shift on that. And I don't really think there's going to be anytime soon. So that's then down to individual jurisdiction, the constabularies, and how they want to approach this. So then that leads us back to a route of collective activism. So at the minute we're hemorrhaging knowledge left, right, and center because people are being bought up, or people are just, even like myself, I've probably enriched and helped build some of the bars of the cell that imprisons me right now in terms of the modern incarnation of prohibition. But ultimately, I believe that that truth will also reach ears of individuals that are capable, competent, and willing and wanting to build a better world. And so I agree with the statement that you said about building alternative models. I think that's something that Buckminster Fuller said, don't waste time, resource, fighting an existing model. You build an alternative and you make it workable and you simply replace it. And I think that, yes, it's all well and good as operating within the medical apparatus and system, but I think it's time that we use that legislation and those rules to then build our own community access, to build our own facilities, to legitimize and give jobs to the legacy market, to find the best amongst us, to bring in education, to bring in testing, to bring in the laboratories, the universities, the institutions that don't have a vested interest in producing content and research papers that are there basically to prop up pre-existing products of multinational corporations. They are there to find the truth of the plant, its interactivity with the endocannabinoid system, how this affects human health, how it affects socioeconomic factors, how the creation of a truly robust descheduled system could mean that everybody would have the right to participate in the market. What social access would do to say the fucking 10% of people that die in the UK attributed to alcohol consumption. You know, how will it affect the cancer rates? How will it affect all of these other things that are just not going to be considered outside of a private laboratory setting for these corporations?
The thing is about weed is it just touches every area of society. There's no area that we could literally talk for an hour about all of it. We could talk for an hour about the patient stuff. We could talk for an hour about the recreational stuff. We haven't even scratched the surface on the environmental stuff.
Hey, I've been sat here for 170 hours plus, I think, at this point, and it's going to keep going. I'm going to get to 10,000 plus hours, and we'll still maybe have scratched a corner and go, right, guys, subject number 2. Sorry to interrupt.
But I think the idea of Green Queen is to empower everybody, including yourself, and all these other narratives that come up, so that when it does become more of a polluted industry where there's more corporate and vested interest, we've got a voice and we've got a celebrity that we've built early on in in the industry, in the greater scheme of things, it's really early days. And I think
I hope you're talking about making me a celebrity there.
Well, sorry, Simpa, you've been promoted.
That's two promotions in this podcast. I like it. So I'll get you on. I'll be running the country by the end of this.
Yes, get involved. Well, at the end of the day, we can't do much more of a worse job.
Yeah, true, very true.
I think Homer Simpson would do a better job as it stands. But I think that it's getting the balance. It's doing the things we need to do, and also trusting the plan and the timing and the fact that it's bigger than us. I think the plants are doing stuff. So one of the things that I've put in the book is the rainbow. Have you ever heard the Rainbow Warrior Prophecy, Simpa?
Yeah.
So the Rainbow Warrior Prophecy says, when the earth is ravaged and the fish are dying and the trees are falling from the sky, trees are falling from the forest and the birds are falling from the sky, Great Spirit will call her children of many colours, creeds and classes, and she will help the world become green again. And I really think that I heard it about 10 years ago. It used to make me cry. And I used to say it in opening circles and ceremonies and stuff. And I think it's really powerful. And now is the time. And the world is ravaged and we are fucked. We've got 30, I think it's like 30 crop rotations left on the soil. Like our soil is fucked, our air is fucked, our health is fucked, our bodies are fucked. And it's like we've just got toxic shit everywhere. And what would it look like if we hadn't gone down the oil route? What would happen if we had an above ground green economy where it's 100 years ago we chose hemp over petrol, and that would mean that we wouldn't have petroleum-based chemicals we've now got to clean up. We wouldn't have microplastics. We wouldn't have all this contaminated shit, landfill. All of this stuff wouldn't be a problem if we'd have used hemp. So this is our second chance. This is our chance to go again. So how do we start creating a system that uses this as our tool? And I think that literally hemp gives us everything. It gives us everything in a way that's above ground. So it's gifted to us. We don't have to go. It's like we've got this really BDSM relationship with the earth where we just think we can go in and grab all the stuff that we want: gold, silver, oil, coal. Like it's almost like we're taking parts of the body out, going, "Oh, you don't need that. You don't need that." But like how like what we've got it all wrong. Like we've forgot that our role here is sacred. We're the caretakers. We're meant to be taking care of the earth, and we're just fucking it up. And not only the earth, but our communities, our bodies, each other. Like that's our job. We're not meant to be doing all this like 9 to 5 bullshit. All you got to do is look after each other and the land, and it's the only thing we're not doing. And hemp is the only thing that can do it at such a speed that we can fix the damage quick enough that we're not going to drown in it. There's no other solution that's on the table that can solve half of these problems.
I've got one.
Mushrooms.
Cannabis. Because if it's instead of using it as hemp, we know that it's 25% fold increase in terms of the health and the structure of the plant. I mean, if we were to then start to interbreed some of these super monsters that they've been breeding, the straggly things that reach to the sky, with some of the then bushy cannabis indica type real resinous things, then we can produce something that we can extrapolate the cannabinoids, the terpenes from, to use for industrial application. And I'm not talking about medicines. I'm not even talking about adult consumption. You know, the terpenes, the volatile compounds, are incredibly useful.
You know what? Even if we burn it, even if we plant fields and fields and we burn it, it doesn't even need to be consumed. We just need to plant it.
Exactly. There's a project called Venturus. What is it called? Gravitas Venturus or something similar to that. I always butcher the name of it. And basically, it's a system that they're creating a warehouse, and they're going to grow low THC cannabis in hydroponic setting in warehouses with CO2 capture from sequestered from the surrounding atmosphere to feed the plants. They're going to put in grey water, and then what they do is they've got an incinerator built in at the facility. They create biomass and then they burn it in a loop. And so the efficiency of it means that incinerator can take in other waste and burn it, and it sequesters carbon. So you could scale up those models and put them everywhere. So that would work as an industrial impact. Actually, as you see,
even like all the other things that aren't mentioned, or all the unusable land. So everybody's talking about hemp as a rotational crop in agricultural setting, but an agricultural setting's already got a value. But what about all the valueless land, things like side of railways, side of motorways, all the contaminated land, all the floodplains, all the places where they chop down the trees? I think there's a commercial model where you offset the CO2 sequestering aspect of the hemp, and you give it as a payback to the council to counteract the big fines that are happening. So that's one of the projects we're going to work with iCanna Link to develop, because we've got we've got a lot of big plans for the future. But I think that this relationship of like a corporate interest, because that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to find a corporate interest. And I read something the other day that said carbon is the next $1 trillion market. So this has all been lined up.
Carbon offset is the trading of carbon tokens and as a model. I just wanted to quickly jump in before we moved on to the next point of these wastelands. Of two of the things that we're not discussing here is the cannabis root relationship to mycelium. It boosts mycelium production massively. There is something in their symbiotic relationship. They just work incredibly in conjunction. Also, then actually not rotating cannabis crops. So if we then rewilded cannabis to certain areas, the creation of intergenerations of cycle of allowing it to form and mulch, create new fresher soils and go through that way is actually far more beneficial than human interaction. But also the intergenerational creation of root networks stops flooding. You wouldn't believe the amount of volume of water that can be sequestered by dead root structures, by things that they're not active on, they're not producing a plant on the top, but they are still active because of their mycelial connection and because of their connection to the microbiome. So creating structures like that, rather than just turning over fields and creating these effectively sanitized holes in open air, we can actually rewild areas and then include. And
then you've got things like planting it with wild flowers as well. So not just monocrop, so then to include other things that help the bees and this whole.
Cannabis, they found studies of 23 different species of bees, and there's one study in Colorado that use it as a late source of pollen that they can derive to create complex sugars from it that they can sustain themselves deep into winter, and it stops hive die-off. So yeah, they get the synergy of this with other sort of what they call it, reciprocal plant crops is unbelievable. So again, keeping cannabis
is like the holistic approach again, isn't it? This is the holistic approach that's been lost, because so I've got a friend who's an ecologist, and I spoke to her about hemp having from a soil perspective of like, how does it help the soil? And she said it doesn't help the soil at all. She said you might as well, from an ecology's point of view, you might as well have a car park. I was like, what do you mean? He said it's not a native plant, it's not a grassland, it's not biodiverse, there's no studies on it, and actually we don't count that it benefits carbon sequestration. It's nothing to do with us, we're an ecology department. I was like, really? And she said, yeah, and also you're just creating another monocrop where you're not cultivating things like wildflowers. She said if you were planting it with wildflowers, you get extra points. But this is another thing where it's compartmentalised in the government. So the environment department isn't the same as the ecology department. So the sequestering of the carbon doesn't benefit the soil, and they're not talking to each other. But this, if we talk about a holistic approach, the environmental benefit as a whole isn't just the sequestering of the carbon. It's loads of other stuff. And that's just stuff that we know of. What about all the stuff that we don't know of? I was speaking to somebody about it potentially neutralising glyphosate for crops and things like that. It definitely does. They're planted it in Fukushima for radiation. I mean, we don't even know what radiation we've got. Do you know what I mean? There's also contaminated land. There's all the World War mustard gas that's buried in military land. Like, there's so much contamination that we don't even know of. Like, just plant hemp, just experiment. And I think this rewilding thing, and I think next year is the year of disobedience, and I think everyone should be planting hemp in these lands. I
think ultimately, yeah, if it was the only reason we couldn't rewild is because of then its profit margins and its value as an agricultural crop. But the vision that I have for cannabis is it becomes effectively worthless. Like, I mean that, but then what happens is, instead of there being Starbucks and whatever else, the people that can grow a quality product get to create craft and bespoke markets. There will still then be a standardized McDonald's, Starbucks of cannabis, and whoever wants to consume that will consume that. There will be the budget weeds in supermarkets and whatever else. But I think that we're going to miss and negate the majority of the benefits of it. I mean, look at what we've got now. The argument of the whole cannabis industry is focused on the pinpoint of getting medical access to, say, what an estimated 1.4 million people. Yet 66 million people are suffering from the consequences of environmental impact of not cultivating cannabis en masse here, not sequestering the carbon, not renewifying the soils, not adding it back into agricultural feed for those that still choose to consume dairy and meat. You know, there are many multitude of ways that cannabis can be utilized to benefit the global society. But at the minute, we're importing that cannabis from Israel, from Australia, from Canada, creating massive carbon footprints to bring it here, when it could literally be grown in the back garden, as it were.
It's back down to the broken system again. I mean, Britain is the biggest exporter in Europe of cannabis, and yet we can't satisfy more than 3, 4, 5.
We're not allowed to. Because I'd argue the system isn't broken. The system is working exactly how they designed it to. It's a layer of corruption and cronyism on top of one another until it creates a tapestry and literally a handbook that they're given that goes, here's what you say to get out of everything. Here's how you play the game and you keep your generational wealth, how you invest into new industries and you get to champion yourself as an expert or captain of industry, while actually all you've done is steal and accrue the knowledge and experience of people that are now going to be impoverished by your pedestal positioning. That's a terrible sentence being honest.
Well, I think that back down to the let's go back to the blockchain, let's go back to crypto. I think there's a big shift in wealth coming, and I think the shift in wealth isn't just all this new money coming from people who bought Bitcoin ages ago. It's a shift in the attitude towards money, because money just kind of it's different how you see money. If you went to work every day and you earned £10 an hour at a job you hate, isn't the same as doing a crop, isn't the same as your Bitcoin going up to £1 million. They're not the same relationships with that money. Do you know what I mean? So there's this whole new wave of money that's coming in that actually do want to make real world change. And also there's old money. I mean, I'm quite ingrained with the medicine family. There's a festival in Reading that's run by like aristocracy really, but very much into the plant medicine, very much into the prayer. And there's this merging of like old money aristocracy, people who are drinking ayahuasca that want to change the world as well, that are coming from trust funds and multi-million-pound backgrounds. And you've got the vagabonds, the gypsies, the people with the knowledge, the songs, the art, the animals, the madness, and they want to merge. And that it's happening, and it's historical. It's happened over and over again. The gypsies and the aristocracy have had a relationship for a long time, and it's because the gypsies bring the magic. And there's layers. The money illusion is shaking globally, and people want to make real world change. And I think that there are people out there. You never know; they might even be listening. If you're a billionaire who wants to change the world, contact me on Instagram.
Yeah, I've been barking up that tree for a few years, because I agree. All we need is a few of the individuals, and I see a similar convergence. But unfortunately, that money moves towards confidence, and the people with the knowledge in this community lack the confidence because they have been destroyed, they have been misled, they have been astroturfed.
Well, that's what we want to build up. We want to build the confidence. We want to empower them. We want to give them a voice, and we want to give them anonymity, and we want to create a global narrative. I mean, I really respect the weed world, the high times, the soft secrets. I definitely respect them now. I'm trying to meet to a print deadline. I respect them more than I've ever respected them ever, especially doing it regularly. But I think that this way we want to talk about it is different. I think don't get me wrong, they have some amazing content, but they're already kind of tarnished with this weedy vibe, and it's great. I love it, but it puts people off. Straight people aren't necessarily looking at that. There's a couple of magazines that are terrible, like CBD-based magazines that are just terrible. But
industry rags to promote products.
They're just very brochure and horrible. So we're going to do a yearbook. It's sexy. We're going to do it early next year now, because there's so much stuff happening and Christmas. But we're going to aim to...
Does that mean I get to update my year in review?
Yeah.
I can add in December.
You're going to have to take out December. Basically, there is loads of stuff happening, and Christmas is not the time to do anything. So it's going to get done really well.
With potential lockdowns and everything else on the horizon.
Well, just all the other stuff, like post is a nightmare, and everything's just a nightmare. So I'm going to make sure that we do it really beautifully, and we do it early next year, and we celebrate it every year as a time capsule. So what we're committing to is a 10-year project of creating this time capsule over the next 10 years to see what the industry looks like then. And I think there's something valuable in having something you can hold in your hand and having a record. The first thing they do when they capture a city is they destroy its history. And we've had this taken off us before, and we're not going to have it taken off us again. And we need a way of preserving what we have, because we don't know what the future holds. So exactly everything, it echoes what you said there. Let's make something in real life, and let's celebrate all the narrative, the stories, the people that are doing the good work, and make something beautiful and lasting, and try and preserve this kind of something special, the magic we've got in our community.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing really here, is to capture the movement. We don't ever realize that we're in moments of great change. You know, even the people living in the counterculture and that were participating, obviously it's been over-glorified and everybody participated, even though a lot of you folks didn't, but you like to claim that you did because it became cool. It was then adopted into the cultural narrative. I think thanks to the internet now, and thanks to the ability to publish things and the wide remit of media that is in content that is created, we can capture the narrative. We can capture what happened. We can document it. And it's one of the reasons I was motivated to start the Simpa Life, was through my blogs, through the website, through my podcast, was to try and discover the truth, and was to capture it in real time as the conversations occurred, as we figured out certain narratives, and be able to cast our minds forward to what we hope to happen, and figure out ways to help push a narrative that was based on equity, that was based on fair participation, and based on true knowledge. You know, the idea that if we find something that contradicts our belief, then ultimately we have to apply that to our knowledge base and learn how to modify that belief. You know what I mean? It's ultimately, I think, that approach and being able to encapsulate it in media form and in a year annual will stand as a tome in the future. It will stand as a form of scholarly text to document. But
it's like it's antiques of the future, isn't it? It's the antiques of the future. And I think this is the collectibles stuff, and like I think we're all collectors at heart. We all have something we want to keep. You know, mine's weed. No, I'm not joking. But there's things that we could put aside. You know what I mean? Especially, I like stationery. I like books. I like diaries. I like. My dad got into collecting dinkies, the little die-cast cars. Everybody, as I said to my little girl the other day, she had some collector's cards from Tesco's, and my little boy ripped them off. I was like, babes, it's all right, they're only cards. And she's gone, Mum, I'm a collector. And I think that we've all got that inside of us. We all want to collect something. So what is it? And actually, I want to collect weedy stuff. I subscribe to High Times and to Weed World, and just because I like them, just because they are a little cat. And I also, we started getting some historic ones from like the 60s and stuff, and from the 70s, and they're just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So I think that's one of the aims. And also art always precedes cultural change. So the first people that document a cultural shift are the artists. I did art history years ago at college, and like the Renaissance and all these key points in history, the artists were all kind of putting code into the art to say it's coming, the change is coming. And I think we need to collect it in as many different mediums as possible, and what you're doing is really valuable. And one of the services we're going to offer next year through I Can a Link, hopefully, is a podcast service with MPK. And we're going to put on some sort of facilitation to facilitate more people to be empowered to talk about this narrative and to gather the voices. You're a trailblazer and don't even know it, Simpa.
I'm just trying to do what I do. I literally started this basically kind of because of lockdown. Nobody was inviting me to come and stand on stages and shout at heads of industry anymore. So it got a bit like, I'll have to sit at home and do this. But I think, the creation of a space for more bespoke content, because as you say, there are no experts in this. And ultimately, we're not looking for one answer from one person, because if we try to find the leader in this, we're going to be chasing our fucking tail forever. There isn't one. And that's kind of the nature of what cannabis is facilitating. The true ubiquitous end of the war on cannabis leads to the end of the war on drugs. It leads to the end of repression. It leads to, in a lot of ways, the end of neoliberalistic globalized capitalism. So you can see that we almost don't have to shape their narrative, because they will get what they want, and there will always be the resistance. There will always be the light in dark. There will always be the truth tellers, the truth seekers. And they can try and squash us down. They can try and censor us and silence us, but we'll just pop up in other places in unexpected ways. And I think we're on the precipice of really unifying together, not just from cannabis, not just from drugs reform, not just from, say, sex work reform, not just from any of these already pre-established forms of activism, but actually just a large majority of people now that feel disenfranchised and disconnected with the mainstream narrative. They are seeking truth. They are seeking community. They are seeking acceptance and understanding. And I think the cannabis community can shine as a bastion and a beacon to others that we will welcome you. We will welcome you and teach you, and we will help you, as long as you are not here to impoverish us, imprison us, rob us, and steal our traditions and our heritage. If you honor it, we're cool with that.
I also think it's because I'm very much into words are powerful. That's again why we started. I think that the gateway drug, this has been tarnished with for so long. It is going to be the gateway to all of those things you've mentioned and more. It's not just about the weed. It's about everything. It's about things like you mentioned, the community, the environment, but also like patient declaration of like, I've got this condition that I know about, that I don't have to tell anyone about, that I choose to use cannabis for, and I don't need a third party to agree with me to say that it's right. That's sovereignty. That's people stepping into their sovereignty. That's I am doing this because I know it's right, and I don't have to ask permission from you because it's mine. It's my body. It's my choice. I went to a brilliant talk at Breaking Conventions about 4 years ago, maybe longer. And maybe it's like 9 years. Anyway, and it was the first cannabis talk that they had on the bill. It was 9 years ago. It was 2013. And since then, they've actually made a cannabis area and had a whole cannabis section. But prior to that, cannabis wasn't really included in this psychedelic scene. But the talk was fascinating. And the first thing he said was, I could argue about it being a medical product. I could argue about it being an economic thing. I could argue. He says, but let's get to the crux of the issue. How dare a third party tell me how to expand my consciousness? And I was like, whoa. And it's true, like that's the point. It's like, how dare somebody else say you can't use that, but you can have this, have a xylitol or have a, what is it, Xanax in America. Everyone's eating Xanax like they're Smarties. Have a tramadol. I mean, have you read some of the side effects of these pharmaceuticals that they dish out to people? I had a lady the other day who had a 9-year injury on her knee, and she basically rung me crying, so like the worst thing in the world had happened to her, and she listed all the things that she wasn't going to be able to do. She was going, I take tramadol, and the doctor said, if I don't stop taking it, I'm going to have liver and kidney failure. I've been taking it for 7 years. What am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to go to work. I'm not going to be able to feed the kids. I'm not going to be able to this. And she listed all the things she wasn't going to be able to do. Anyway, she used CBD cream on her knee for 2 days, and she come off all her tablets. She said the pain has gone and she feels 1,000,000 times better. She'd been dealing with the side effects of these tablets for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And she's still including like digestive issues, constipation, all these knock-on effects from taking all this cocktail of painkillers that weren't even getting her out of pain. She was still in pain.
It creates a pain cycle. This is what is starting to be taught now. Obviously, it's starting to come to light after the Purdue lawsuit around Oxycontin. So they're starting to understand how certain industries and institutions have been influenced to change the modern perception of how opioids and opioid-based medications affect pain receptors. So continual use will actually increase sensitivity to pain. So you see this with people that then come off heroin, is they then have a real difficult time with just base sensation, because as their body comes back to it, it is interpreted through the nervous system as pain, because they haven't had that interaction with it. It's the same with them when we look at SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, that are given out again like Smarties. I mean, they're trying to pull it back a little bit now. But
antidepressants.
Or various other compounds that are given as antipsychotics, that are given as anxiolytics, anti-anxiety medications. And again, the continual use of these over time has been shown to create almost a perpetuation of the problem, that most things are only ever designed to be short burst, but because of the profit motive of the pharmaceutical industry, the medical establishment as a whole, means that they want perpetual patients continually consuming a medication. They want a maintenance drug, not a cure. So they're quite happy to give somebody something that gives them side effects that look similar to a symptom of their illness, so they can then give them a second or third medication. And this is quite common knowledge within the medical sphere. And so is that greed? A patient cured is a patient lost. Yeah. I think a Goldman Sachs...
Patient cured is a customer lost.
Yeah, and it's a Goldman Sachs executive spoke this just to a load of pharmaceutical investors, and he basically said that we're not in the business of cures. Cures are not conducive to a healthy economy. So you understand, when you understand that cycle, and what I'm worried about is they're the same people that are taking over medical cannabis, as it were. Every time we say medical cannabis,
100% in the same way
they're the ones who own it and take it. Whereas if we can take back cannabis in the same way, if we take back hemp, and when it's all cannabis, we can grow a plant in our back garden that sequesters carbon, cleans up our soils and everything else. And actually, if we then clean up that soil to a level, we can use that quite happily, where we could juice the raw products, we could consume it in any which way, smoke it, whatever, without any fear of toxins or pollutants. And then from that, we've then got other resources. If we actually had localized decortication, we wouldn't need then mass plant production of these things. You could actually end up with real localized economies. I truly believe that in order to tackle climate change, as it were, in order to stop and prevent any real serious consequences moving forward, we have to kind of reduce globalization. We have to kind of go, well, why get from China what we could produce at home? Or why do we even need that product in the first place? Why ship our cannabis in from Canada when we can grow it in a greenhouse? Why?
The way that I see it, and I've tried to write it down in a document, and oh my God, I'm so dyslexic. I don't know how the universe has given me a magazine job when I'm so dyslexic. I tried to write down when what it is that the community does, and it works like cannabis does in the body. It's creates homeostasis, it creates balance, and it's an adaptogen. It adapts to the community's needs. It adapts to what that community wants. In the same way as it adapts to what that body wants, it works on a bigger way as well. It adapts to what the economy. I watched a brilliant documentary. I can't remember what it was called, but the whole thing was about cannabis, but didn't mention cannabis. It was just about the economy, and it was like a state in America that was completely like a mining town that was devastated, and they brought back the cannabis industry, and all of a sudden they were saying the cafes come back and the nightclubs opened and the car lots opened, and they didn't even mention the cannabis. They were just saying it's this money, the money come in, and that is an adaptogen to some degree. It adapted to what that community needed, and it needed an injection of cash, and then naturally it created a shared resource within the community, and it created these little pockets of health. Like it became healthy again, it became irrigated with whatever it needs. And I think the plant is doing that constantly, and it is the adaptogen and the homeostasis. It's sharing the resources and sharing the poisons, and we've all got the same problems and we've all got the same resources. And when there's an abundance of raw material, so let's say like the hemp plant is the most versatile plant in the world. Once we start planting it in these places just to sequester the carbon, and then all of a sudden we've got all this raw material that we can do stuff with, that's where the innovation will come from. When there's loads of it and we're going, well, we must be able to do something, then we'll start making batteries.
We've already got the idea of it, but again, it's because of economics that we will not see the true potential of cannabis. It is cheaper and more palatable to allow children to die in lithium mines. It is easier and more palatable to allow the Taliban to take back Afghanistan and refuse the Kurds to have Kurdistan to take this world's largest lithium deposit over the next 10 years.
You know what?
These things are much more palatable than allowing the decentralized resource to end the feudal classist structure that has been built into Western society. Old money.
This is where you bring in crypto. So crypto is, we don't care, we're doing it anyway. We're doing it anyway. And if you want us to show you, you can look. But if you don't get it, it's nothing to do with us. Like, we're going to do it. And if you ban it in this country, we'll go to somewhere else. And they're doing it in Ethiopia and African countries and Vietnam and places. And what it's going to do is it's going to create this homeostasis of the world. And it's another fork in the road. It can be used positively or negatively. And I think the key to the crypto stuff working is anonymity, because we still need the right to privacy. even though we were asking sometimes for it to be transparent and sometimes to be in the private. We don't want it to be transparent. That is key. And what the problem is at the moment is those dodgy deals that are being done in the dark about all these pharmaceutical things and all these big companies that are doing dodgy stuff. They're doing it in the dark. It's opaque. We don't ever get to. They want to see. They want to tell someone who's on universal credit that they're getting an extra 20 quid a week is like there's the devil. But Starbucks and fucking Vodafone and these ones, they don't pay anything and they're completely opaque. They don't have to explain to anybody. But the little person, they make you explain every little penny. Where do we want to be anonymous and private, and where do we want to be in the public? And we want the corporations to be public, and we want their stuff to be transparent, and we want to act in the private. It's backwards. It needs to be flipped the other way around. But
the only way that that's going to work, I agree that crypto has the potential to create a decentralized, almost, I don't want to say homogenized, because I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but in a more fluid global community and network. But I'm also very much aware of the structures of the world that we live under in terms of international treaties, laws, and precedents that have been set before us in terms of, again, we look at the history of colonialism, we look at the history of the slave trade, we look at these various things that now in abstract, hundreds of years later, we can go, what the fuck? But they were deemed as, that's completely normal, that's how we operate. And they were justified by the ruling elites' ownership of the governance elite, of those that are the authorities, you know what I mean? And so, oh crap, I need to take this call.
Go for it. Do you want me to talk, or you talk? You go, I'll talk.
I'm just gonna, yeah, just
go. Yeah, I think the crypto stuff. Hi, I'm Simpa's podcast. So I think the crypto stuff is really unique, where they're trailblazers, and they're in a place where they're pushing boundaries constantly, and they're not asking for permission. And I think that's where we need to be with the cannabis industry. Is the same way that we. Hi. I think the thing is about the crypto people is they're not asking permission; they're just doing it. And I think this is where we need to learn from that space and say we need a global network of safety that we can trade in, that we can communicate in. And I think that the way that the industry has been treated with the banking systems and the hydroponic companies have been treated with the cash stuff, and everyone's having banking issues, I think sooner or later, by them trying to make it as difficult as they can, they're going to force the community to create a solution to the problem that they've created. So potentially they want to push everyone into being transparent on the blockchain. But if there's a layer of anonymity there where you can be anonymous to it, then that tool becomes really useful rather than it being used against you. And I think this is another place where we're at, where it's clay. This is still moldable at the moment. We can still create something that we want, but it's that fork in the road. If we go down the wrong road, we just give everything over and then we've lost everything. So I think we need to be really clever with how we want our community to interact in the future. And I think that the social the social shadow banning and the algorithms and all of that stuff as well is going to force people to create a system that they want to use it again. And I think it's almost like it's in emergence. You can feel that next year there's going to be so much stuff popping off for our community.
Yeah,
it's coming, you know.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to wrap this in the next 5 because I've got
you know what, we could go on. I can't believe we've hit the 2-hour mark. Let's we've got. We'll wrap it up. I just wanted to bring a point to that, is that my fear is that just a point to consider, just for the audience at home and yourself, and I suppose anybody within the space. I fear that anything that is allowed to proliferate in the wider society is in some way either controlled or to the benefit of those that control us. And so I worry that the restrictions of physical fiat currency on one side and the allowance and acceptance of a cryptocurrency before we have quantum encryption, bear in mind there is only one nation so far that has truly cracked quantum encryption, that maybe we're being funneled towards a system that scares me. I do hope that the creation in cryptocurrency, that you could have 2-layered system. So effectively you have a crypto cash. So cash is anonymous. You go to a shop, there's no digital sale of it. You've just got that money and spent it. But then if you put it on credit, there would then be a sale and it's needed for certain regulatory reasons, refunds, etc. But then should be limited. So I would hope that that wins over an eventual global
ownership, the new, if the International Monetary Fund suddenly switches from fiat currency and individualized currencies to regions to a cryptocurrency that then has some other form of classism built into it, that, we're going to be in serious trouble. But as you say, I think with cannabis, with psychedelics or entheogenics, with social reform movements, with any of these points of activism that we're involved in, thanks to the internet, thanks to concepts like morphic resonance, and thanks to our wider acceptance and evolution and ability to communicate, we really can shape these narratives and arguments moving forward. Definitely.
I think it's a really hopeful future, and I think it's coming, and we're just kind of holding it. We're not doing it, we're just holding it. And I think we're doing, the plant will come in and fill in the gaps. And I'm just amazed at some of the beautiful international. We haven't even spoke about Mexico. Simpa, we could go on forever, but Mexico was amazing, man. And the people that are doing stuff over there, they're just so full of passion and fire. And I think this is a global community. This is a global community of change makers, and they're all beautiful. So thanks, Simpa. We've gone on for 2 hours. Sorry.
It's been wonderful. And on your final point there, shout out to all of our international listeners and viewers. I see you, Turkey. You've been flying up there. We've got quite a lot of listeners coming through Turkey at the minute. Big listenership actually has arisen recently in Jersey as well. Shout out my Jersey.
I didn't realise we were properly live.
This isn't live. No, I'm shouting them out where they're hearing this. Where you're hearing this, folks, I am not here. I'm going to be sat enjoying a nice joint somewhere or investigating something sinister to write into a blog, I'm sure. But it's been wonderful. Thank you very much, Ria. Check out Green Queen everywhere, really. greenqueenmagazine.com, is it? .co.uk?
Yeah, greenqueenmagazine.com. We've got some really good articles, we've got some good stories. We're looking for on-the-ground reporters always. So if you've got a story, contact our editor, May. She's amazing. We're on Instagram, and get in touch. And I'm going to have to start doing more podcasts as well. I've got loads of guests that are waiting to be, so I need to get organised like you, Simpa.
Yeah, get it done. You need a Green Queen podcast. I'll be one of your first guests. We'll do it. Right.
Indeed. All right.
I need to go. Have a wonderful week, folks.
Bye.